Welcome to a journey through time, back to a world that feels strangely familiar, yet is alien to us now. A world where the hum of engines didn't fill the air, where streets were calm and travel was measured not in minutes, but in hours, days, and sometimes weeks. Today, we'll explore what life was like before cars existed, how we moved, lived, and connected with distant places, and why, eventually, humanity felt compelled to invent something truly transformative: the automobile. Our story isn't just about machines, it's about people, necessity, innovation, failures, and the slow yet unstoppable push toward convenience and freedom. Imagine a bustling town square. No honking horns, no gleaming metal frames, no asphalt roads. Instead, it's the steady clip-clop of horse hooves and the rhythmic creak of wooden wagons that fill the soundscape. For centuries, this was how people got around. If someone wanted to travel to a nearby town, they didn't say, "I'll be there in 20 minutes." They said, "I'll be there by nightfall." And they meant it. Before cars, the most common form of personal transport was walking, horse-drawn carriage, horseback, riverboats on waterways. These were the lifelines of movement. Rivers and canals were the superhighways of the day, carrying goods and people long distances, more comfortably than rough and muddy land routes. Owning a horse and carriage was a symbol of wealth, akin today to owning a luxury car. But unlike today's cars, horses had to be fed, stabled, groomed, and cared for daily. They tired, needed rest, and could fall ill. Travel wasn't just slow, it was costly and exhausting. The roads themselves were often little more than dirt trails, full of bumps, mud, and obstacles. Rain could turn them into quagmires. Winter brought ice and snow that stopped journeys altogether. Getting from one place to another wasn't just a matter of convenience, it was a serious undertaking. So, if you wanted to visit family 100 miles away, it might take 3 to 5 days. You'd pack supplies, prepare for discomfort, and hope for fair weather. This was life before cars, a slow, deliberate pace of travel where distance was measured in sunrises and sunsets. For centuries, inventors dreamed of a way to move without horses, without the need for constant care, feed, and rest. But it wasn't until the late 18th century that the first attempts began to appear. In 1769, a French inventor named Nicolas Joseph Cugnot constructed one of the earliest self-propelled vehicles. It wasn't graceful, it wasn't fast. In fact, it moved about as quickly as a determined walk, roughly 2 miles per hour. This vehicle was powered by a steam engine, essentially a boiler on wheels. It was heavy, awkward, and difficult to steer. During tests, it famously crashed into a wall, making it possibly the world's first automobile accident. But even as clunky as it was, it proved something vital. Machines could move without animals. That idea, simple and obvious to us now, was revolutionary then. In the decades that followed, various inventors tinkered with steam, electricity, and internal combustion ideas, each trying to find a better way. Electric carriages existed in the 1800s that didn't spew smoke or smell like unlit fireplaces, but their battery life was limited, making them impractical. The story truly begins with Carl Benz, a German engineer whose name would become synonymous with the automobile itself. In 1886, he patented the Benz Patent Motorwagen, a 3-wheeled vehicle powered by a gasoline engine. This wasn't a horse carriage glued to a mechanical engine, It was a purpose-built machine, designed from the ground up to run on an internal combustion engine. It had a 954 cubic centimetre single-cylinder engine, a top speed of about 10 miles per hour, a lightweight frame built for practicality rather than showmanship. At first, the motorwagen was met with skepticism. People were used to horses. For many, the idea of a self-moving machine was akin to seeing a strange creature walk off its own accord. But innovation doesn't wait for comfort. Carl's wife, Bertha Benz, would later take the first long-distance road trip without him, not for publicity, but to prove the machine worked. Along the way, she solved problems on the fly, improvising brake materials and stopping to refuel from pharmacies because gas stations didn't exist. Her journey was one of invention as much as demonstration. As peaceful as the pre-car world might sound, it carried quiet problems that slowly grew harder to ignore. For centuries, cities were designed around walking distance. Markets, homes, workshops, and places of worship were packed closely together. This worked well when populations were small, but as the world entered the Industrial Revolution, everything began to change. Cities grew, factories appeared, jobs concentrated in urban centres. People moved from rural villages into crowded towns in search of work. Suddenly, the distances people needed to travel every day grew longer, and the old methods of transport began to feel insufficient. Horses were still the backbone of movement, but they came with serious limitations. A horse could only work so many hours a day. It needed food, water, rest, and care. In large cities like London, Paris, and New York, hundreds of thousands of horses were required just to keep daily life moving. With that came a problem rarely mentioned in romantic depictions of the past: waste. Each horse produced large amounts of manure every single day. Streets were often covered in it. In summer, the smell was overwhelming. In dry weather, it turned to dust and filled the air. In wet weather, it became thick mud. Disease spread easily. Flies thrived. By the late 1800s, newspapers openly worried about what would happen if cities continued to grow at this pace. Some even predicted that streets would eventually be buried under meters of manure if nothing changed. Walking, too, had limits. It was fine for short distances, but exhausting and impractical for long commutes or transporting goods. Wagons helped, but they were slow and dependent on animals that tired quickly. The world was changing faster than its transportation systems could keep up. And slowly, quietly, the need for something new became obvious. The idea of a self-moving vehicle was not new. Humans had dreamed of it for centuries. Ancient inventors imagined carts that could move on their own, powered by hidden mechanisms or mysterious forces. But imagination alone wasn't enough. The technology simply didn't exist yet. By the 18th and 19th centuries, however, new discoveries began to change what was possible. Steam power had already transformed factories and ships. It seemed logical to ask, could it move a vehicle too? Inventors across Europe experimented with steam-powered road vehicles. These machines hissed, rattled, and shook violently as they moved. They were heavy, unreliable, and often dangerous. Some required a full crew just to operate. While impressive, they weren't practical for everyday use. They took too long to start, consumed large amounts of fuel, and struggled on uneven roads. Governments were cautious. In some places, laws were passed requiring a person to walk in front of steam vehicles waving a red flag to warn others of their approach. Electric vehicles appeared surprisingly early as well. In the late 1800s, electric cars were quiet, clean, and easy to operate. For a time, they competed seriously with gasoline vehicles. But their batteries were heavy and limited in range. Once depleted, recharging took hours. Meanwhile, gasoline engines, loud, smelly, and temperamental, quietly improved year after year. What they lacked in elegance, they made up for in potential. This brings us back to Carl Benz. Unlike many inventors before him, Benz didn't simply attach an engine to an existing carriage. He designed his vehicle as a complete system. Every part served a purpose. Every component worked together. The Benz patent Motorwagen was not fast. It was not comfortable, but it worked. At first, few people paid attention. The world didn't immediately recognize it as revolutionary. But history often moves that way, quietly at first. Then came Bertha Benz. Without informing her husband, she took the Motorwagen on a long journey to visit her mother. Along the way, she encountered problems no one had considered. Fuel ran out, brakes wore down, roads were uneven and steep. And yet, she solved each issue as it arose. She purchased fuel from pharmacies. She reinforced brakes using leather. She proved that this strange machine wasn't just a curiosity, it was usable. That journey did more than demonstrate a car. It revealed what the world needed to build around it. Better roads, reliable fuel access, mechanical support. The automobile wasn't just an invention, it was the beginning of an entirely new system. As cities expanded and industries grew, time became more valuable. The ability to move faster and farther meant better opportunities, stronger economies, and more efficient societies. Cars offered something no horse could: consistency. They didn't tire, they didn't need rest, they could be used at any hour. They required maintenance, yes, but not daily feeding or stabling. For businesses, cars meant faster deliveries. For workers, they meant living farther from crowded city centres. For families, they meant freedom. The ability to go where they wanted, when they wanted. Gradually, roads improved, gas stations appeared, repair shops opened, governments invested in infrastructure. The car didn't replace the horse overnight. For years, both existed side by side. But slowly, inevitably, the automobile proved itself to be the more efficient solution. With the rise of the automobile, the world began to reshape itself. Cities spread outward, suburbs formed. Travel became personal rather than communal. Distance shrank. What once took days now took hours. What once required planning became routine. But that's a story for another time. Tonight, as you rest, it's enough to remember that the world you know, filled with roads, engines, and movement, began in a much quieter place. A place of dirt roads, horses, and slow journeys beneath open skies. And it was necessity, not convenience, that pushed humanity forward. As the sounds of the past fade and the quiet rhythm of history settles in, you can let your thoughts drift, knowing that even the most ordinary things around us were once extraordinary ideas. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. It would help me out a lot.